Aloha, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Triple F Podcast, Faith and Family First, where Jim Hochberg and I are going to be talking about what the church, and not just the church, but the wider community, how they view business. And is business able to provide any good things, bad things? How do we see that? Well, let's chat about that. Hi, Jim.
Hey.
You're a business. You're a self-owned
Monkey
business. So I would say that's a big yes. Having worked with you many years, Jim is all about monkey business. But
this show's going to be no different.
No different. Okay, so the report we're going to be discussing today is a recent report by Gallup and in conjunction with the Bentley University Business in Society report.
What's the president's name of Bentley University?
I don't know. Bentley. I don't know. What's his name? You tell me. Since you're asking this question, you must know Jim Hochberg.
So it is in here on page 3. He's got a little smiley picture. What's his name?
E. LeBrent Crite. I don't know. Well, yeah, that's why you wanted me to do
that's
it.
Why
so that
I wanted to ask you, because I don't know how to say it.
So I massacre his name. So I apologize to anybody who may be related or know him. Hey, put the comment below if I said it wrong and how I got to say it. So, Jim, the reason that I chose this report is because last week you and I talked about the amount of people that go to church has been declining, and one of the reasons that they're not going. But I thought, okay, that's the church, right? Let's look at another thing that feeds the economy, which is businesses. And so how do people view businesses? And, is there something we could learn from this? Are there some good things or some bad things? And I thought this report was a great study to do that. So before we jump in, what was your overall impression after you read the report?
Worldview.
I knew. There were several places in here. Jim is going to jump into his thoughts on worldview.
It's the problem.
It is.
But one thing I wanted to ask you, what comes to your mind when you hear the word Bentley?
I think of an automobile.
A very expensive.
A very nice.
A $200,000 and higher.
That I would never be able to drive.
So this is Bentley University asking people what they think about business. Maybe the perception of business was so not positive because the people being questioned didn't like Bentley.
I think everybody that's watching and listening is going to be interested in this conversation today because all of us experience some kind of business every day, whether you walk into something like Starbucks or whether you shop at something like Walmart or whether you're praying that a Chick-fil-A opens up in your neighborhood. We all experience business.
Or you actually have a job in business.
You do. And so...
Which you don't, but I do.
Well, I am in the nonprofit business, though.
Well, it's not a business. It's nonprofit. The legal definition of business is to make a profit.
Right, but I noticed that in this study, nonprofit work is in there.
Well, that's one of my defects with this study. But go ahead.
All right. So let's dive into the study, and as we always will, we'll make this particular study available in the link. So if you're listening on the radio, go to the Hawaii Family Forum YouTube channel, and you can click on the link to get this report. Or if you're on watching on YouTube, look in the section below, and we'll have it there for you.
Can we, you, the kingly we, can you? Would you be willing, because it's part of this show, offer somebody a free copy of the U.S. Constitution? Can we do that? Sometimes we used to.
Yes.
We haven't done it in a while.
So the first person who sends me an email at eva@hawaiifamilyforum.org, you will get a free copy of a pocket constitution.
Now, why was that of interest to me? Because when you read your pocket copy of the Constitution, what you're going to see is two different levels of stuff. One was founding fathers deciding that in order to fix the Articles of Confederation problem that was after the Declaration of Independence, when we had America, but before we had the Constitution, there were issues between the colonies they had to fix. Some of them were related to how the government's going to work. Others were related to how to make sure the federal government didn't interfere in free enterprise, business. And when I read the Constitution of the United States, what I see is a free enterprise protection compact. And how do you end up with what we're going to talk about here in a country whose founding legal document is a private enterprise protection compact? We'll talk about that after we talk a little bit about this, but that's why I want somebody to get a free constitution to understand what I'm talking about.
Yep. And so that as we start to paint a picture of what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk again about the differences between the younger generation and the older generation on how they view. And I'm telling you, as someone who is in the older generation, You're
talking about me?
We're in the older generation. Okay. You knew Moses personally. He came, he was.
I changed his diapers. I fished him out of the water.
You were there. I know that. No, you were there when Jonah ended up on shore. Unfortunately. Okay, so I have to say that I'm starting to be a little bit afraid about what the future is going to hold. I mean, last week we talked about marriage and the state of marriage and how this younger generation even views marriage, but I'll tell you what, not everybody chooses to get married. I mean, that's the bottom line. Everybody's affected by business one way or another, because how the business economy goes is how the world goes, right? In fact, I know for a fact that people are standing by and they're afraid of what's happening with the economy right now. And some of the businesses are making choices that are scaring people. In fact, a lot of the big businesses are the ones that are choosing to go woke. And according to this report, it's like they're listening to a different generation on what they're providing.
Forward looking.
Yes. And so,
but what I would want to say while we're talking about business in general is when you make energy costs double, you double the cost of everything, because everything is moved to your local store by using energy. Everything's produced in the factory or harvested from the field or slaughtered in the slaughter using energy. So it's kind of a no-brainer. If you don't want things to cost double, you have to make energy prices half what they are. And they doubled when President Biden's woke green policies shut down our own energy production. You can't do that.
And it's interesting because we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the level of involvement that people think businesses should be on some of these issues. And I found it very, very interesting. So stay tuned. We're going to talk about that. So they begin their report and they give you these statements, and then they give you what their findings, right? So the first statement they give is that Americans believe businesses have a positive impact on their lives, but they can do more. And one of the things that jumped out for me on that portion is that, according to them, Americans are twice as likely to say small businesses have a positive impact on people's lives. That's 85% compared to the large businesses, which are 42%. And that jumped out because even here in Hawaii, we see the effect of small businesses. Here in Hawaii, we really support small businesses. And so if you're a small business owner out there right now, we give you a shout out. We thank you for what you're doing for the community.
I completely disagree with you.
Okay.
COVID supported the big boxes to the detriment of the small boxes. The number of small businesses and small restaurants that closed because of the fact that Walmart and Costco got to stay open because of our government's policy. It was all over the country.
But that's true. But that has nothing to do with what this statement was. This statement on this study is that Americans are more positive about small businesses and their impact. So you're right that during COVID, the government decided to help the big businesses. But we're not talking about the government. We're talking about the people. We're talking about the people. And
if I had one of those red flags, I could challenge you and we'd reel it back. You would say, here in Hawaii,
with me, Jim
here in Hawaii, we support small business. That's what I responded to.
I object. Prejudice from. All right. So anyway, I loved that was one of the points that they brought out on this.
But the other thing that needs to be drilled into is this younger generation has been fed information from public newspapers and all that stuff
Yep.
about big business is bad, big business is bad, right?
Right.
So that's why it comes out that way. It doesn't mean that it's true. It just means they've been misinformed.
But I think the real people that answer this, especially the older, and again, we made it very clear that we're talking about two separate groups here. We're talking about younger generation and older generation. The older generation is fully aware of the impact of small businesses and what they do. And I think that's the point that I want to drill home, is that a lot of us appreciate and support small businesses as we should.
Yeah.
I mean, when I watched what happened again, tying it into Lahaina, the small businesses, these guys some of them are packing up and moving because they cannot deal with all the bureaucracy that they're going to have to do to rebuild their business. And that breaks my heart that is absolutely. But your point is well taken, though, that there is a strong difference on how people view big business and small business. And I think that is important. Another point they make is that Americans think businesses are falling short in important areas. And one of the points that struck out for me was that over 80% of Americans believe it is extremely important that businesses make money in an ethical way and compensate all workers fairly. I was thinking that's kind of, I can see that would be 80%. That's quite a large amount of people that believe that. And
they also thought that there shouldn't be such a big gap between what the top line managers make and what the worker bees make. But again, so I read that and I think to myself, well, what are they using as a measure? So I don't think Ford Motor Company's CEO should make $25 million a year if the people building the cars make $100,000.
Well,
25 million versus 100,000. That's a big difference. But what I wish the study asked them to tell us, which you really can't do in a study, but I wish it did. Why should it not be that way? Or how would you measure what's appropriate? Or, you know what I mean? It's like just a question with an answer, but no context.
Going back now to, again, understanding that there's a difference in viewpoints from the older generation and the younger generation. So going back to that statement, Americans believe business have a positive impact on their lives, but can do more. It's interesting that the younger generation has this idea of doing more businesses in things like environment and social issues and all of that. And I thought it was pretty interesting that the older, so let me read their statement because it kind of ties this together. Views on environmental impact are sharply divided by age and political affiliation, with younger Americans and Democrats much more likely than older adults and Republicans to feel businesses have a negative impact on the environment.
Now, we did a show with the ADF guy talking about that program that Alliance Defending Freedom has, trying to get companies to open up about diversity of thought.
Right.
So in that show, if you want to go back and find it, it was Jeremy Tedesco, and I forget what the name of the program is, but in any event, it's 80. Anyway, what younger people have not been educated on, and this really just drives me batty. The purpose of a food company is to produce food at a good price so that people can eat it and it's healthy.
Right.
The purpose of a construction company is to build buildings and sell housing at a price people can afford. The purpose of companies is not environmental stuff. And here's the thing. If a company's stock are sold in the stock exchange, it's a publicly traded company, they have a fiduciary obligation to their millions of stockholders to maximize profit, not care about the economy if it hurts the profit. These young people are uninformed. And what does Scripture say about what happens with the lack of knowledge?
I know, my people perish. I get it. But I will say that I agree with you to a certain extent. But I do think that companies need to be aware. For instance, talk about the construction company, right? You're right. Their job is to build whatever it is in their line of construction that they specialize in, right? So say that they're a construction company that does just housing. They do need to be concerned that when they're building in the process of construction, there are waste that happens, whether it's shredded pieces of wood or whatever. I would hope that they're not tossing it into.
That's not the environmental issue. The environmental issue is not using wood.
Well,
because of the environment, using something else.
That's one.
That's an example.
But that's an example of
exactly.
it. But them tossing it into the water and ruining the sewer, they need to be
See, that's the whole point. Those kind of easy environment questions are already regulated by every government in every state, county, and federally. Clean water, clean air.
Right.
We have our own Waimanalo Gulch dump problem on Oahu. The government's already taking care of that. The environmental stuff in this study that young people think businesses should be more involved in is AOC's Green New Deal.
No, I agree with you on that because I've listened. I have a lot of friends that are in that age group, and I listen to what they say, and it's interesting how a lot of them are Christian, and they really move into this socialist circle. Like they really see that there's some good in socialism, and we should be embracing it. It sounds like Bernie Sanders and AOC. I mean, they really, really do. But and I think that's what frustrates me, Jim, is that everything in the kitchen sink is thrown into this. And it shouldn't be, because things need to be carved out piece by piece. For instance, going back to this topic, we're talking about environment, right? If the kiawe tree was endangered and there were only a few kiawe trees left.
Hallelujah. You ever step on a kiawe?
Oh my gosh. Yes, I have. Whew. Yes, I have.
Nasty.
In your slipper. You get that in your slipper. Brah. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, but let's just say that the kiawe was endangered. And there was a construction company that was building homes that decided that they only wanted to build with kiawe. I mean, obviously that is an environmental concern, right? I think there are people applauding, like, go build with the kiawe, go get rid of them. And you can't build a house from a kiawe bush. Okay?
I don't think the branches are long and straight enough to make an 8-foot long piece of wood.
But I'm trying to make my point
okay.
of.
I'm trying to follow you.
Well, no, but I mean, but if it was a really good, or koa, right? If koa was endangered, right?
Yes.
And suddenly they wanted to cut down all the koa trees to make,
you couldn't get the permit to do the grading from the city and county of Honolulu if what you were going to do was going to impact something that was protected.
And that's
it's already covered.
And that's a conversation I want to have with somebody. If somebody's going to argue with me about the environment, I want them to do what you just did. I want them to give me facts about what they're talking about. But that's what's missing in the conversation today. Now people that are jumping on
feelings.
Yes, and they give you these general statements they heard from AOC or they read from her Facebook. And I would submit that AOC is not the person you should be going to if you want to learn about true environmental justice.
I probably wouldn't ask her how to bartend. I don't trust her to tell me the truth.
You are rotten. She may have some giftedness, but
she was a bartender,
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't make that up.
Let's go back to the report. And if you look, Jim, on page 13. What they're talking about here is that Americans think businesses are not maximizing their power to make a positive impact. And again, looking at this overarching thing of some of it's in the environment, but that's just one of the subcategories. But
they would love it if businesses had to provide all kind of paid time off.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, but that's not why people that invest in businesses.
No, it's true.
Unless the business is childcare or a nursing home.
Right.
I mean, seriously.
But here's what's interesting about this particular page, right? So they're breaking down into categories now, these types of businesses, right? And so the question they ask is, how much power does each of the following groups have to make a positive? So how much power do these subgroups make to have a positive impact on people's lives? And then it asks, how effective are they? And I thought it was interesting. So the 4 groups, they break it down. One is businesses and companies. One is charitable advocacy organizations. One is state and local government. And one is federal government. And I thought it was hilarious that charitable advocacy organizations are the lowest in power, but the highest in effectiveness. I thought, now, does that make any sense at all to you? They don't think they have the power, but yet they're the ones actually doing the work. They're the most effective.
So this is where my worldview discussion sprung.
Okay.
Because it is amazing to me that there are that many people in this country that want the federal government to be bigger than the state government, bigger than charitable organizations and bigger than businesses. That worldview is socialist. That is a socialist worldview. You let the federal government be in charge of everything. That worldview is the result of the failure to educate Americans on the Constitution being a compact to protect private enterprise. This country has one chance to survive in hope, and that's Jesus Christ. Socialist, people-driven, greedy, non-scripture-based systems are going to crush, because they always do in history. They always crush the people. Well, that's where we're heading. That's what this jumped out at me. Worldview screamed at me. We have to start teaching people that here's the other way to look at it. What's not being taught to result in that worldview? What's not being taught is free market economics, which is you lift people out of poverty into the middle class through free enterprise. It's proven. It's not a theory.
No, you're right.
And we're not teaching that. Well, why in the United States of America would we not teach kids before they graduate high school about free market economics, the banking system, budgeting, lending? Why wouldn't we teach that? Because we want them not to appreciate it. We're not teaching it for a reason. It's not like, oh, we forgot. Mm-hmm. This is a goal, I think.
Yep. In fact, it ties into, if you turn to your page 15, when asking them, should these businesses weigh in on these issues? Well, what issues should they weigh in on, and how they feel about these issues? And so the question they asked is, do you think that business in general should take a public stance on subjects that have to do with the following? And it was interesting that the top thing that they felt, these people that were polled, that businesses should weigh in on was climate change. The next one was mental health at 52%. Free speech was tied with healthcare. Racial issues was 39%. Racial was 45%. Gun laws, 39%. LGBTQ issues, 37%.
You left the plus off, dear.
Oh, sorry.
You're eliminating one whole 20% of their group here.
So 37%. Immigration, 34%. International conflicts, 27%. Abortion, 26%. Political candidates, 19%. And 15% religion.
So if we were going to put this list of topics in an actual logical order of what should businesses be more concerned with, they should be mostly concerned with immigration, and if they're a multinational company, international conflicts, political candidates who are going to regulate them, maybe healthcare and mental health for their employees, maybe. We have failed to educate an entire generation of people, and like we've said in other shows before, the only hope we have is Jesus coming back and ending this whole program.
Absolutely. I do want to say that it was interesting that abortion was low on the list, because they sure make that out. The news seems to report that is the number one issue on everybody's minds and hearts. But this study was not done in a church group. This was a wide berth. And so somebody needs to be listening that abortion is not the issue that everybody's looking at.
But it is at campaign time for Democrats. It is.
But politicians are lower on the list. It's like, I think.
No, but if only half of the people that are eligible to register to vote in Hawaii register, and if only half of them vote, for the political class, that is a big issue for that small group. And that's probably their 25% right there.
But if I was running for office, I'd be looking at whether I agree or not, I'd be looking at the top categories, the top 4 things right there.
If you were running for office, you would be looking at voter surveys, not surveys.
But businesses, government's included though. Remember, they broke government down in there. And so if I'm gonna be part of government, then I need to know that this is what some of the people are concerned about. But having said that, let me reiterate that number one, we should be doing whatever the Bible is calling us to do. The hat we should be wearing at all times is our Christianity hat. And all the lens that we're looking at everything should be the way the Bible talks about. And if we do that, some of that opinion is going to change. But that's the reality right now. We have to look at what the reality is, and then how do we fix it? By preaching what needs to be preached.
And I think the more accurate way to say it on a micro level, individually, me. Obviously, I'm a Christian. I intend to serve the Lord in all the things I do and everything like that, but I'm also not 100% successful. So each individual person should take a look inside and say, where do I need to increase the successfulness?
Yep. And so as we drill down in this last couple of minutes, if we look at the figure 6 on page 19, Jim, what were these people asking businesses to provide for them? What are the things that are important? So is the business excellent or good at it? And then, and how much of the percentage of the respondents felt it was important? So right now, let's just look at what they think are important, right? So it's the yellow. So
mine's not in color.
Oh, yours is not in color. Well, just look
this
at
is a color graph.
Just look at
Mine's
the one on
black
the
and
right
white.
side, Jim. The one on the right
the
side.
81%.
Yes. So
they want wages.
Yes.
Fair wages.
Yep.
And what's a fair wage?
Well, that depends.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. They want people to make money in ways that are ethical.
What does that mean?
How is that defined? Right.
All of these. That's my answer to all of these, because it's great to ask these questions. It's like Obama.
Right.
He campaigned, and whatever he said, it meant whatever you thought you heard.
Right. So all we're doing is reporting what's on this, and then we'll end.
Do we want to go over?
We have time to go down it very quickly. So they also want to avoid a major pay gap between CEO and average employees,
which we talked about.
They want to provide high quality health care benefits. They want to operate in a way that is sustainable for the environment and planet. They want to offer free mental health support services to employees. They want to improve the communities they serve. They want to reduce carbon footprint and our emissions. They want to make the world a better place.
So my response would be, hey, everybody that thinks that's what businesses should do, go start a business. See after 5 years how much of this is important to you.
Yep. They want the companies to offer flexible work arrangements. They want to create opportunities for low socioeconomic groups, and they want to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. And you can do that by joining the movement to preach Jesus and to bring hope to a nation that needs hope. So like this video, share it, subscribe, hit that notification button so you know every time we upload a new video, and stay tuned as Jim and I delve more and more into not only how people view things that are happening in the world, but why it might make a difference in the church for you to plug in. So we will see you all next week. Mahalo, everybody.
Aloha, and Jesus doesn't believe in DEI.